Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here. Welcome to one of the last DS4E webinars of this calendar year, but certainly not the one of this school year. We're thrilled to have you all here for today's discussion. On behalf of the Data Science for Everyone Coalition, welcome to Data in the Wild, how real-world data can lead to impactful instruction. We're super excited about this webinar and this opportunity to share out some really great example lesson ideas and resources for the classroom. While we wait for more people to join Zoom, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. So please share your name, organization, and why you're interested in joining the event today. We'd love to hear from you and to get a community going. My name is Eric Drosta. I'm the Executive Director of Data Science for Everyone. As many of you all might know, DS4E is a national initiative, coalition, and community based at the University of Chicago. We're striving to catalyze the adoption of data science and data literacy as a basic component of K-12 education. Originally catalyzed from a Freakonomics podcast back in 2019, the push for data literacy has become a national movement since, with about 3,000 plus education leaders, and now I believe 29 states, if Sam is on, participating states across the country. We are currently working on four things. We're raising awareness, gathering and catalyzing classroom resources, doing community building just like this one, just like this event today, and then policy and advancing policy as it relates to data science education. I also want to remind everyone real quick about the DS4E community standards. We welcome coalition members of all different backgrounds and levels of experience with data science or data literacy education, and to create room for healthy and engaging debate and research and collective learning. We've established a code of conduct that creates an environment of respect, inclusion, and effective communication. You can learn more about our community standards, including how to report violations if it's ever needed, on our website, and we'll drop a link in the chat now to that resource. So with a few reminders and intros out of the way, let's get into data in the wild. In today's data-driven world, the ability to understand, analyze, and draw insights from real-world information has just become an essential skill, right? As many of you know. As educators, we have a super unique opportunity to bring this relevance into our classrooms and hopefully make learning more engaging, and at the same time preparing our students for the challenges of the future. Real-world data offers us such a powerful tool to bridge the gap between abstract concepts and theory that is often in the curriculum and really practical applications for students. And whether we're exploring environmental issues or tackling health challenges or trying to just understand social trends online, authentic data can transform teaching and can make really engaging experiences for students. And it not only enhances students' analytical skills, but also fosters critical thinking, problem solving, and ultimately a deeper connection in the curriculum to the world around our students. So today we have some really awesome examples of some educators and some state leaders who are doing just exactly that. And I'm going to turn this webinar over to our fantastic MC and our instructional design director, Mahmoud Harding, who's going to take this conversation away.
Thanks, Eric. So I want to introduce our speakers. They all bring a wealth of knowledge to this space, and I can't wait for y'all to hear what they have to share. I recently took a trip out to Idaho and met some fantastic people, and I just wanted to make sure that those people are amplified across our broad coalition, and also with Taryn Shelton, who I work with. She's the K-12 data science coordinator at NC State, and she's always had a passion for making science engaging and relevant, and she uses hands-on and project-based learning. And for my new friends from Idaho, Kathy Bills, who's the state mathematics coordinator for the Idaho State Department of Education. And then we have Jim Erkins, who's a water educator from the University of Idaho Extension Program. Jim, I know I just met you, but I feel like I've known you my whole life, because one of the most interesting things that I learned about him when I first met him is that he was a park ranger. And I will let our presenters take it from here.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to share with you a project that we did in Idaho, actually before we knew about anybody at Data Science for Everyone. Before I share the actual content, I want to just tell you the story of this project, because it's very inspiring. There was a sad situation in our family in that one of my daughter's best friends from high school was killed in a one-car rollover accident, and he was not wearing a seatbelt. And the girls, when we watched his funeral online with 3 of his best friends from high school, that was a really difficult day for me. The girls said they always teased him about putting a seatbelt on, and they said they mommed him and put the seatbelt on, and so it really broke their hearts that he died from not wearing a seatbelt. So I had that in my head when Idaho Transportation Department called me. They were working with the STEM Action Center, and they wanted to do a project with their newly launched crash data dashboard. So they have this dashboard that has all this data on crashes in Idaho. And so it was right around this all happened the same summer. I ended up meeting with the funders, which was Horizon Credit Union, Idaho Transportation Department, and the developers of this crash data dashboard. And they said, how can we get kids to look at this data? Because if they will look at the data will convince them to drive differently. And I had in my mind my daughter's friend. And so really this project is a tribute to him. And that it was a lot of my heart in this of trying to keep kids safe through math. So in the meeting, I said, well, every single kid has to take Algebra 1. Well, what if we use math to get them into the data dashboard? And I said, math saves lives. So that was the name of the project became that day. They all loved it. It was Do the Math, Save a Life. And that's actually become kind of a theme in lives. So this project, the way it was only cost us $10,000. Horizon Credit Union and the STEM Action Center funded it. We hired 4 amazing Algebra 1 teachers from around the state, and I hired a great project lead, Josh Watson, from our regional math center at the Lewis Clark State College. And they put together these open source resources. I had no idea how popular these would be in our state. Teachers love them. It's just 6 lessons. And so I'm going to talk you through the resources. I don't have a slideshow. I'm going to actually take you right to the website so that you can kind of explore them in your 7 minutes left here. So I think somebody put the Shift Idaho, Do the Math Teacher Curriculum. I'm going to share my screen and walk you through the website. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we went about developing this in case you wanted to replicate it. It's not turned on because I got kicked out and had to come back in. Request, who's that? So in the meantime, while you're waiting, if you want to go to shiftidaho.org, and you have to go up to the menu and you'll see a tab that says resources. Okay, so if you click on this tab right here, you'll see the resources, and then you scroll down, you're going to
Kathy, if you're able to hear us, the internet seems just a little bit choppy. Um, While we're waiting for Kathy to get back online, Jim, I wonder if you want to jump in and start sharing just a little bit of your work to date in Idaho and the relationship that you've built with Mahmoud very recently and some of the work you've been doing to, I think, have a really non-traditional but exciting on-ramp for students.
Sure. I could jump into my presentation if you'd like, and then we can swap back out after, and I could be a little bit quicker to
Are you all still there?
Make up some time there. Oh, is that?
Are you all still there?
Yeah, Kathy, we're still here. You want to try to run through it, so let's see how much of it we can get from your end.
Yes. I'm struggling with staying in the meeting today. I'll try one more time. Oh,
Kathy, maybe you want to take a few minutes and just try to reset your internet, and then Jim, why don't you jump in with your background, and we can swap back.
have Jim go and I'll try to figure out where I'm at, and I'm going to move locations too.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Thanks so much. Yeah, Jim, why don't you take it away?
You got it. Sounds good. Okay, really quick. Again, I'm Jim Eakins, University of Idaho Extension. I'm the water educator for the state. I'm based way up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is kind of up in the pointy end of the state, way up north. I'm just a couple hours drive from the Canada border. I do a number of different education programs that are all related a lot more to watershed science, but of course science comes with math. So one of my main programs is the IDA H2O Master Water Stewards. It's a citizen science water quality monitoring program that we've been running since about 2010. Yeah, there you go. Good. And I'll let you know. I'll just do a switch slides or something like that. It extends beyond Idaho. I actually teach in Eastern Washington. There's no similar program there, and I can even use, anybody can actually sign up and use this program. We teach regular people how to collect water quality data. We have stream habitat assessments, physical and chemical assessments, like the temperature and the dissolved oxygen and the pH, and then we have biological assessments. And we operate this on a level of sophistication that's very accessible. And what we found is it's great for everything from upper elementary through high school use. And it does include collecting real world data and uploading that data into an online hydrologic information system. Go ahead and let's go to the next slide. And anybody can take the online class. It's an online thing. It's 3 hours. It's the kind of the prep portion of it. It used to be a classroom part, and now it's online. And then for those who actually want to do monitoring, we get into the stream and we practice our techniques, and we make sure everybody is comfortable with that. Now, I take IDA H2O and I blend that with things like Project WET. Many of you are familiar with that. Water education for teachers is the old tagline. It's now water education today, but it's the same idea. It's a curriculum-based program, and a part of that is Healthy Water, Healthy People. Again, a very data-driven program where water quality data is collected and then it's uploaded or at least used in the classroom. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. You can see we have water quality monitoring sites all over Idaho. That is, if you can see the screen there. And then outside of Idaho in Eastern Washington and even as far over as Wyoming, kind of on the edge of Yellowstone National Park. And all of this data is stored securely in a hydrologic information system and then can be extracted. And so students can grab a spreadsheet from the water quality monitoring site that they've monitored. And then they can also grab a spreadsheet from another site and they can do some comparative stuff. Let's go to the next slide, please. I don't want to get bogged down too much here. So IDA H2O has become the water quality, the base of what we call the Confluence Project. We have close to 500 high school, generally sophomores, throughout northern Idaho. We get them out of the classroom and we do field excursions to actually collect water quality data using IDA H2O, and then they go back to the classroom and they analyze those data and they use those data in their projects at the end of the year. We also teach snow science, and that's another thing that we have the students collect the snowpack data. How much water is in the snowpack? Many of you in the East and on other places don't have this system, but we rely in the summer on the water that fell as snow last winter. The snowpack slowly melts and provides water consistently through the soil and through springs and into our rivers and creeks all year long. It's the only reason we have any water at all in the summer, when it doesn't rain really very much at all, even way up here in northern Idaho. So there's a huge need to understand how much snow there is and therefore how much water will be available. So the students collect their own data and then compare those data. In other words, if an inch of some of you know that snow has sometimes very nice and light and fluffy, right? There's mostly air with just a little bit of water. Sometimes snow is very heavy and dense. It's really hard to shovel. Well, that's maybe 50% water and 50% air instead of 10% water and 90% air. So an inch of snow can be a vastly different amount of water. Well, they collect that data, they figure out how much water is up there, and then they compare their data with these automated sites called SNOTEL sites that have been collecting data on an hourly basis for, in some cases, 40 years. So they can see how good of data collectors they are. They can compare their data with that day's data collected by the automated machine. And then they can graph the data over time. So they could graph 40 years of data from that date. Let's say we take them out on February 10th. Well, they can go back for however many years the SNOTEL site has been working and graph those data and compare their data on that day that they collected with the graphed data from 40 years. So that's one of the other things that we do with IDA H2O and with the Confluence project. And again, IDA H2O, the water quality data, what are the stream temperatures looking like? Are they trending up or are they trending down? How about the dissolved oxygen compared to the stream temperature? How about, let's say, the pH or the turbidity, the clarity of the water? We also use IDA H2O in a citizen science project with crayfish. We have native crayfish up here. We have invasive crayfish moving in from other places. Does water quality impact the health of the native crayfish or the movement of populations of non-native crayfish around? And then I use IDA H2O in a lot of summer science camps. I do 4-H camps, I do natural resources camps, and I get the students out to actually collect real world data at an educational level of data quality. I think that is the last slide that I have. I'd rather spend more time talking with folks and answering questions than doing a formal slideshow, but there's my information. Anybody is welcome to email me if you want more information or anything like that. So jot that email address down, or maybe one of the background moderators here can do that. I'm going to turn it over to whoever you feel like is next. I can't remember if I should go back to Kathy or Taryn.
Jim, thanks so much. That was just awesome. And
Okay.
I love this application. Yeah, I do want to make sure we have a lot of time for questions so we can make it really dynamic. And as Shay mentioned, if you have questions as the presenters speak, please drop them in the chat. We'll capture those and then try to organize them for Q&A. But let's go back to Kathy. And Kathy, do you want to try to pick up where you left off? And we'd love to hear more about some of your work.
Yeah, sorry about the difficulties. I'm going to, oh, great. Now I'm not. I'm struggling this morning. I'm so sorry. I can't find my screen because I moved off my multiple screens. Is there any possibility, Marissa, that you could share the cross data dashboard site and I could just walk you through it?
Yes.
Technology is great when it works.
No, it's all good. We're all Zoom veterans and used to internet and camera issues at this point. So it happens to everyone. But we're excited to see your resource regardless.
So I'm going to walk Marissa through it, which you guys can all just follow along on your browser. So you're going to go to the ITD Shift Idaho.
And Kathy, while Marissa's getting that queued up, just to remind us of the intent of the project again. So, I think this came from a really personal story. It evolved into a really powerful lesson experience. But could you just speak to the development of the work and how you use resources together?
Yeah, so while she's finding it, so what we did was the teachers looked at the crash data dashboard and then they looked at so on that crash data dashboard, she went to resources. And then they looked at the crash data dashboard and they said, okay, what are some questions that kids could answer from this data? And then from there, they looked at our standards. And then they said, what standards could we teach with this data? that would normally be in an Algebra 1 class. So let's go ahead and scroll down and look at the resources, and we'll just come back to that video at the end. So if you open up, click on lesson 1, ITD Crash Data Scavenger Hunt. So that was the first lesson where they just let them explore the website. And if you click on download lesson. So each lesson will take you to a Google Drive file. So you can, these are completely open source. They're just in a Google Drive, and the teachers can download them. So each lesson, if you go to the one that says the bottom file at the bottom, that one. Okay, so this is what we call our 5E lesson plan model. And if you're a science person, you may have heard of this lesson plan model. But one of the first things they did was we created this template that walks the teachers through an inquiry-based lesson. And an inquiry-based lesson is where you give the students an investigation or exploration, and then you sort of unpack what they learned from their exploration. And then from there, the teacher gives some explicit instruction on some mathematical concepts. So we refined our template first, and then the teachers all have the same template. So each lesson, there's 6 lessons, gives this teacher this lesson in a common format. And that was a really helpful tool. The other thing this tool has done for us is now teachers can take this template and they can use other sets of data to have a really solid lesson. So that's been pretty great resource for teachers, not just the lessons themselves, but the lesson plan template. So if you want to go back to the folder, the other thing they created was a PowerPoint that goes with each lesson this is the student facing information that walks the students through the lesson. And then the teacher has that lesson plan to follow. And then there's some other background information. The other 2 documents are the teacher guide that has all the lessons. It's an overview of the whole project. If you want to go ahead and open that one. And then the other document was the worksheet that goes with the lessons book. Scroll on down in that little booklet to the 3rd page. Okay, so there you see all of the lessons. Can you enlarge your screen just a little bit? And you can see the mathematical concepts that they tied it to, and then they linked to all the documents. But line of best fit, using knowledge of data, the center, the spread, and the limitations. So these are Algebra 1 students getting exposed to these mathematical concepts that they're actually going to see all 3 or 4 years of high school and into college. So this has been incredibly popular. One of the things that they've done with the project is then the kids, after going through these 6 lessons, they come up with a community-based project to like a way to improve their safety of their community based on these lessons. So it's been a great project. It means a lot to kids in Idaho because it's Idaho data, but you could take the lessons and sort of adapt them to data in your state. Or even just the concept of designing a project with a company. So what we've done, this has been so popular in our state that we're now talking to like the Water Resources Council, and we're talking to the mining association wants to do a project. So I have all these businesses approaching me. I have more opportunities than we have capacity, but this is sort of given businesses in Idaho a template of how they could contribute to math education in Idaho. So it's been a great project. I've been so surprised at how just $10,000, it was like 5 amazing content writers from our teachers, and a partnership with a wonderful organization in Idaho Transportation Department. Can you go back to the resource pages and just play that video? So this is our video about how math saves lives. I don't know if you shared your sound.
And Kathy, I know most states have departments of transportation. So like you said, I'm assuming it's pretty easy to port elsewhere and copy to another state context. And I'm hearing you're giving explicit permission for folks to steal.
Absolutely. 'Cause this is on Idaho Transportation's website, and actually it's received a national award. The Idaho Transportation Department received a national award for partnering with educators, and this has gone viral nationally. So if you did approach your transportation department in your state, they probably already know about this project. Looks like the video, I'm not sure we can get it to work, but it's a really cute video about
Math
how
is everywhere, at the airport, the grocery store, and especially on our roads. Math can keep you safe when driving. Here's how the Idaho Transportation Department uses math to make us all safer. Every time a crash happens, police send a report to the department's data specialists, aka the crash team, a group of people whose job is to keep records of every single crash in Idaho. The crash team reviews the incoming reports and combines them with all the crash data from across the state. They typically process more than 26,000 crash reports each year. Once they input the data, it's analyzed and shared with many traffic safety professionals who use it in different ways. Engineers use this data to help set speed limits, time traffic signals, or make other changes to the roads you drive on. Planners use this data to determine when and where to build new roads, including to help prioritize the funding of those projects. Police use this data as they plan activities to get unsafe drivers off the roads. It can even be used to help plan safer routes to school. This data is used every day to make our roads safer. Now it's your turn to do the math and save a life.
Idaho Transportation Department made that video after seeing all of the lessons. So the thing that I love about it is this little project has changed the conversation about what math is in our state, and has given our high school teachers a vision of a different kind of mathematics instruction. And so it's been an amazing influence on conversations about the math that is needed for today's world of data and STEM. Thank you for tolerating my technological difficulties this morning. I'm so sorry.
No, it was totally worth it, Kathy. I mean, well, first I want to know whoever your videographer is for the Idaho Department of Transportation, because I'd love to get their contact info. That was amazing. And I also think, like, I love that question in the lesson plan that you had students explore, like, should we raise the driving age to 21 or not? I think like those types of things that are so relevant for students, right? That can really be an engaging like class debate, and then you can connect the mathematics, which I think is just awesome. Thank you for walking through that. I know we're going to have some time for questions, but Taryn, last but not least, I know you've been leading a lot of amazing work in North Carolina, really across subject areas for supporting K-12 educators to bring data science and data literacy in the classroom. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you all have going on down in NC.
Great. Thank you, Zarek. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm really excited to share with you strategies that we have developed to help actually hook and better engage students. I'm going to go ahead and share with you guys. So our goal is to engage students with data and to do it in a way that kind of hooks them in before they actually see the numbers. So again, I'm Taryn Shelton. I'm a K-12 data science program coordinator at NC State, and I work for the Data Science and AI Academy and the Science House. And my work focuses on providing teachers and students with the skills that they need to work with real data. So over the course of this year, we have actually been working with research scientists and outreach folks at our Center for Human Health and the Environment. And we're supporting a cohort of middle and high school math and science teachers to help them integrate public health research data into their classrooms. So our approach to successful data integration follows 4 key ideas. First is igniting student interest, promoting curiosity, that natural curiosity the students already have, then encouraging free data exploration, oftentimes with few guardrails, just letting them get in there and explore on their own, and then developing agency through data storytelling. It's really important to our mission at the Data Science Academy and AI Academy to prioritize the learning experiences in which students have the agency to make genuine choices. So I'm just going to talk through just a few strategies before they even actually grab the numbers. One which I'm sure many people are already familiar with is the Dear Data project. So this is one way that we use to help capture student interest, especially at different grade levels, and it really primes them for future investigation. So if you're not familiar, the Dear Data project is a series of postcards that was sent between two friends between New York City and London over the course of a year, and they just creatively visualize their everyday experiences. So we just have students, again, from different grade levels. This really works. They are tasked with collecting their own data, so data of their choosing over a determined period of time. And then they work to visualize that data in very creative ways. So this really builds student agency, that they have ownership of the data that they're collecting. And then again, they have ownership in the way that they choose to visualize that data. And it really primes them for future data investigations. So as I'm sure many of our teachers in here have experienced, when asking any group of students, no matter the grade level, what their thoughts are on working with data and numbers in their classes, their immediate response is, data. And they complain that data isn't interesting and they have no personal connection to it. So I actually worked with a group of high school students to create an activity that would captivate student interest before they ever see the data. In this particular activity, we have students draw an organism that they might find in or near a river in North Carolina. And the key is they have to name it. So then each student group is tasked with drawing a specific section of a river, and then they're given instructions on the types of structures to draw on the land around their section. And then they attach the organism to the river, and all the sections are taped up around the classroom. So they're taped together to create one long continuous river. Then we give students a PDF of the data set containing local data. This data, again, is out of Center for Human Health and the Environment. It's local PFAS contamination data out of our Cape Fear River. And the students and their groups are simply instructed just to discuss this data. What do you notice? What do you wonder? What parts do you think you can figure out? And what parts just don't make any sense? Now, while they're discussing this data, the teacher quietly walks around the room and attaches little sticky dots to the students' organisms. And the number of dots is actually related to the specific section of the river, but they don't know that yet. Then the students are asked to go back and look at their river and review it and review their organisms. And what they notice is that, one, the name sections that they had actually correlate to their data set, and two, that the organisms in certain sections have more dots in others. Now, once it's revealed that the dots actually represent illness in their organism, they become immediately concerned and want to know what is happening. So we have developed that agency with them. The key, again, was naming their organism, and now they feel personally attached to it and are driven to figure out what is going on. So next, we engage students with visualizations related to the actual topic. So in this case, PFAS, and we do a round of slow reveal graphs. If you're not familiar with slow reveal graphs, there's actually a website that you can look up different graphs, and those graphs just kind of walk students through slowly revealing different pieces of information. So it's not a resource you've used before in your classroom. It's really good at engaging students in visualizations because they can kind of debate what the graph's about. And then we, again, reveal different pieces at a time. So we kind of took that idea and we changed it up just a little bit to match the actual PFAS investigation. So they have a, let me get to ours. So what we did is we modified it, and we gave groups different versions of the same graph with pieces of information missing. So you would have multiple graphs floating around the room, and two different groups would have different versions of the same graph, and then they would do what do you notice and what do you wonder on their graphs. And then we would have them hold their graphs up, and then they would locate another group that has the graph the same as theirs, and they come back together and they try to piece together that information and make more sense of that visualization. And then again, they do what do you notice, what do you wonder? We actually give them the full graph, so it makes it a little bit easier for them to look at, and they start picking out important pieces of information. This really grabs students' attention instead of just giving them the full graph and having them try to sort through it. We get a lot of shutdown when we do things like that. It's actually been my personal teaching experience that utilizing case studies and problem-based and project-based learning, inquiry-based learning really captures that student curiosity. So now that we've primed their brains to be wanting to know what's going on with their organism, and we've shown some different visualizations related to the topic, we now invite them to kind of be a part of this case study of this problem. And with this particular class of one of our cohort members, his 8th graders, he hired his students to act as environmental scientists who've been tasked with figuring out what is going on in the river they created, which is the Cape Fear River here in North Carolina, and to make suggestions to the people who live there and who are using that water. So these types of investigations really prime students to think more deeply about the data visualizations, about their purpose, and drive them to want to investigate more. So we've built this capacity or this drive in them before we've ever actually really given them numbers to work with. So now it has meaning and purpose. And it's then that we turn students loose and we just encourage that free data investigation. So we give them the actual research data. There are 2 ways you can do it. You can give them clean data or messy data. While we acknowledge that having students work with messy data to wrangle it, to clean it up can be very time consuming, it's also, and time is a precious commodity in our classes, as teachers already know. It's really a missed opportunity if we don't give them at least some opportunities throughout the year to mess with, to work with some messy data. So we really encourage teachers to find opportunities to allow their students to have these important data experiences. Commonly, we find that most students entering college or job positions they encounter data aren't really prepared to work with it to get it to a form that can be analyzed. So you can give students clean data sets, but then we also encourage to give students some of the messy data. And to help with that, I've actually created a student guided PFAS lesson that talks students through how to take the actual PFAS data that they saw earlier in its messy form and get it to a place that can be cleaned up. So, teachers can kind of incorporate it throughout the year. It just shows them how to bring it in a code app, but before that, how to clean it up in sheets. So we wanted students to have the authentic data exploration process and to draw their own conclusions. So the teacher gave them their PFAS data set and then set them loose in a data exploration tool like Code App. So Code App's a really easy one where students can pull in and drag and drop. And so they went through and found their own findings and how did those findings address their local river. So here's just some examples of some student investigation. Again, these are 8th graders using Code App with a cleaned version of the PFAS data out of our Center for Human Health and the Environment. They drew their own conclusions. They made their own recommendations. And then finally, we just have them engage in some type of storytelling process. So building that agency with students through data storytelling, they can do that through storyboarding, actually storyboarding like we would do in an English class where we have a visualization, we have a little narrative about it, and then we kind of put them all together and it creates a bigger picture, a bigger story. So multiple people have different visualizations, different pieces of narratives, and then they create a bigger picture. There's also whiteboarding that we can do with our students. So related to PFAS, different groups are kind of looking at different pieces of data, again, research data that's been given to them from our center, and then whatever they find in that data, then they kind of relay it and create this kind of bigger story or bigger picture of PFAS in their environment. It's also really important that we humanize data, that we address misrepresentation, and we talk a lot about data ethics and data for social good, not social harm. These are communities. This data represents real people, real places where they live. And so how we communicate results about that data can impact those people. And so having mindful conversations with students about how we represent their communities and the data that is about them. So these authentic experiences not only build students' data capacity, but they bring purpose and agency to those numbers, and they kind of help dissolve that dreaded data mindset. So happy to answer any questions.
Taryn, that was also equivalently awesome. I've been looking forward to this webinar all year, honestly, because I think I remember like Kathy, I think I literally remember there being a traffic fatality question in a textbook problem, like back when I was in, high school, like for my Algebra 1 class, right? And you can imagine each of your topics as, let's say relatively unengaging word problems in textbooks. And what you all have done in each of your examples is, I think, really brought them to life, made a whole experience that is very rich and applied for your students, and allow them to go down rabbit holes that are really productive, right? Like they can go, down. Oh, I have this like really, this question about, what should the driving age be, or like, oh, I want to really explore the ethics of like this particular data collection process related to the issue around PFAS. And like Jim, you're getting your students out of the classroom, right, and like taking them to local rivers, and that's just such a different way to engage with the material that I think is not the standard. So I wanted to say, yeah, I'm really inspired by all the examples here. I'm going to pass it back to Mahmoud because I know Mahmoud for long enough now to know he always has questions. And so I know he already has a couple questions for you all on how you all went about designing these experiences. And then if you're in the audience and if you have a question or that you want to ask one or multiple of the panels, please drop in the chat because we're tracking those. We're going to try to get to as many as we can.
All right, thank you, Zarek, and thank you again to all the presenters. I consider all the presenters friends of mine that I've met through different experiences. But I want to return back to Jim. You were mentioning that the students actually go out there and they collect the data and they have these sensors and they compare. Can you describe a moment when students were analyzing data and it led to some kind of actionable insight for the community?
Sure. A lot of times we think of data as strictly numbers, but how about finding an invasive species that had never been reported in the state in its history? So we had high school students from Lewiston High out doing their water quality monitoring, collecting all of the different bits of monitoring that they do, both in the Snake River and immediately adjacent in the stormwater ponds in Lewiston. Now, Lewiston is separated from the Snake River by a big dike, basically a great big seawall, because the river has been elevated up. It's a big series of lakes. These students found this funny looking crayfish down in there. Now they had been trained to look for aquatic macroinvertebrates, the bugs that live in the water, and one of those, of course, is crayfish. Now we have native crayfish, and they knew what to look for because we trained them through their high school teacher. And they found this crayfish that didn't look right. Well, they brought it back, and we confirmed that it was the red swamp crayfish, an invasive species that had never been documented in Idaho. And because of that, the managing agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, was able to immediately go in there and implement a management plan.
Wow,
So
that's pretty amazing. I'm gobsmacked. I don't even have any words. That's so amazing that they have had an impact on their community with something that's real.
And it wasn't, it wasn't the aquatic, the water educator. It wasn't the state aquatic invasive species program or even the managing agencies. It was regular people. It was these high school students. And the cool thing is that the group of us doing this citizen science project related to crayfish, we wrote a journal, a peer-reviewed manuscript for the Journal of Bioinvasion Records. Those students who found the crayfish are authors, co-authors. They're co-authors with the rest of us academic-y types on that paper. I mean, who else could write the methods section better than the students who are actually out there using those methods to collect the crayfish data?
Thank you so much, Jim. It's a lot of exciting work going on in Idaho, and I just want to amplify that. And with that being said, Kathy, I do have a question for you. So as your role as the math coordinator for the Idaho State Board of Education, how do you see data science transforming the way that math is taught across the state? You mentioned something slightly about this when you were talking about do the math in your presentation, but I'd like you to expand upon it a little bit more.
Yeah, just for clarity, I'm with the Idaho Department of Education, which is a little bit different. Are we doing okay here?
Yep.
Okay. So I think I could put this on. So I love what Taryn said about humanizing mathematics. And so what I'm seeing across our state is as teachers are infusing questions that data can answer into their math classes, it's giving students a reason to learn the math. The most common question high school students ask in math classes is, when am I ever going to use this? And I feel like working with data sets has given them an entry point into advanced math concepts, the different types of functions, being able to visualize a trend line and then make an equation to represent that trend line. Those are all the applications of algebra, and even moving into calculus that students never understood, like the purpose of mathematics in the world. And so it's really changing. I think it's having an impact on math identity. I don't have data on that yet, but we are working on a math identity survey to start administering to Idaho high school kids to see, because if we change their mindsets and their beliefs about math and they see themselves as math people, and that math solves big, real problems in the world, that's what this generation of high school and college students are wanting. They want to make a difference. And when they start figuring out math actually is a way I can make a difference in my chosen career interest, it's really changing the culture of high school math classrooms in the ones I've visited. And I know I work with the high flyers, I work with the innovators a lot, but we are starting, to get some changes in teachers that have been, they're not necessarily as involved, but we're starting to see some momentum in that. There's more and more teachers starting to embrace some of these ideas.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. I see that you're leading a lot of great work that's out there in Idaho, but I want to return back to my home state of North Carolina and ask Taryn a question. So Taryn, I've seen you do presentations and work before, and I think it might be very beneficial for the group to learn from what advice would you have for teachers who may feel intimidated by sort of technical aspects of working with real data sets in their classrooms, especially given that you put that guide together about kind of how to clean data in the process around.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mahmoud. So, first of all, we have a saying, I don't know if it's just a saying in North Carolina or a saying throughout, but we say, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one chunk at a time. So it's really the same thing with data and data investigations, right? So just breaking it up into little pieces. Like I always tell educators, don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Don't feel like you have to take a big data set with lots of variables and clean it all up and then analyze it and create a story. Break it up into pieces throughout the year. You might do something really small, like a deer data visualization. You might spend some time in class just looking at a smaller, easier to manage data set like the PFAS one, which only has a couple of variables, and then just working together to make sense of it. How would you clean it up? And let's do this in class. We can spend 15, 20 minutes doing that. And then we're not doing it again. Like that's the only thing that we're doing. So again, just breaking up those technical aspects for students a little bit along the way will all start to come together if we revisit it and revisit it, but we revisit it in pieces throughout the year. That really helps students grasp how to work with data so that one, they don't feel overwhelmed, but also you don't feel overwhelmed with it. We also encourage people just to reach out to us at the Data Science and AI Academy. We're happy to talk through strategies. If you're lost in data cleaning, there's infinite resources, but sometimes it's easier just to chat with somebody. We have great resources in our library as well as in the DSA itself, and we can talk through what it means to clean some data up and make some sense of it, just to help students really think about where you're trying to go with your analysis. And you can throw some messy data into Code App and it won't make any sense. And that kind of gives you a little bit of guidance along the way, right? Of like, what do I need to maybe do to this so that it makes a little bit more sense when I drag and drop it to different axes.
All right, thank you so much, Taryn. I really appreciate that. One of the things that I know for sure that's happening in North Carolina is that we are trying to push forward and get more data science into more classrooms throughout the state. And so a question for the group here. How successful do you feel you've been at recruiting teachers to use and do your activities and curriculum? Like, what is your hook? Jim, you can go first. I see you
Sure.
smiling.
Briefly, we basically go teacher by teacher in the high schools as it's word of mouth. We generally work with environmental science teachers. And in Idaho, that can be an honors class, and that can be the really low performing sort of class. And we work with all of those students, and actually those low performing students often thrive. We sometimes work with chemistry teachers and other teachers, but we just go out and look for teachers in high schools that want to do this.
Kathy?
I would agree with Jim that the best the way it grows is teacher to teacher. So once you get 20 teachers using it, which we have done through our conferences in the state, we've like the Middle School Association Conference, the Idaho Tech Council Conference, the Idaho Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and Idaho Science Teachers does a joint conference every August. So we try to have a presentation, but mostly, and then all of our regional math specialists, we have 14 regional math specialists throughout the state. They all, when they have an opportunity, will share it with high school teachers. But it's the open source nature of it that they love. They also love that it's only 6 lessons. It's not a full curriculum. It's something that can complement their core curriculum that they're already using, that their district's paid a lot of money for. So honestly, it's been used way more than I ever dreamed it would be. And there's been news stories on it. If you actually just want to Google "Did the Math Save a Life," you'll find some news articles from different parts of our state of the projects the kids have done with their communities. So it's really been, for me, it's been more of a surprise at how popular it's been. I don't have the most recent number of downloads from the Idaho Transportation Department, but they've talked about how many hits they get on that website. So go ahead and add to them.
And Taryn, what about you?
Yep. So I'll just echo what Kathy and Jim said. Engaging teachers, we bring teachers in through professional development, but our model at the Science House is train the trainer. So we encourage those teachers to not only implement in their classroom, but promote within their schools or even their district presentations and district PDs. We bring them with us to conferences like the North Carolina Science Teacher Association and allow them to present what they're doing in their classes, and they can answer questions, and they, allow other teachers to kind of reach out to them. So again, it's that word of mouth. Teachers trust others who are working in their classrooms.
And so one more question for all 3 of you, and I'm going to start with Taryn this time, going back around. So you mentioned that sometimes you want the students and the teachers to get a sense of what it is to work with clean or messy data. What are some of the strategies you find to balance that out?
Again, just breaking it into chunks, always give students some messy data to look at, even if that's not your focus for the day, and let them make some important choices about it. And if you have a specific, like in the PFAS, we had a specific goal that they were accomplishing, which was telling the story of PFAS. And because time's limited, we give them some clean data sets to work with in a variety of data sets. We split it up into groups. One group might be working with one data set, and another group is working with another, and then that kind of flow chart brings all of the ideas and findings together. But then just having that messy data and just, again, letting them go into CodeApp and giving it to them in Google Sheets. Google Sheets is really good, easy for students to navigate. Most students are familiar with Google Sheets and can know how to move and change things around in them. So just doing little bits here and there. Here's something that's a little bit messy. We're just going to clean it up a little bit together as a class. Versus, today we're just working with something that's cleaner. If that answer what you're asking, Mahmoud.
Oh, no, it does. It does. And Jim, I'd like to ask you the same question, because I know that they collect their own data, and having had students collect data, they're not always consistent in how they report it. So what kind of strategies do you have?
Yeah, it's true. We don't do a lot of work with the students specifically with the messy data, other than the data that they collect, and sometimes it's pretty messy. I think one of the things we do with that snow science data is that comparison of how good a job that they do collecting the data, how careful were they, versus, and they can compare it immediately that day with a snowtail site that's maybe a little higher elevation and maybe a half a mile away, but still very comparable data. So they get to compare what they do with what the automated machine does and see how close they can get. That's probably about the most we do with that, other than that they have to do a project at the end of the year, and they have to use some data. And so they have to clean up any data that they collected if they're going to use their own data.
All right. And Kathy, I'm going to phrase it a little bit different for you, because the students actually engage with a dashboard. So what are some ways that you've had the students and teachers think about different methods for engaging with the data that's already been sort of curated for them and looking at different presentations of it?
Well, I think that, and I'm an elementary teacher by background, so I understand scaffolding. And I think you have to start where you're controlling the data set a little bit so to get them so because I think it's really overwhelming if you just throw them in and say ask a question, use all the numbers. But I think what's made our project successful for freshmen is that everything's pretty structured and controlled. But then after they have that experience, they can then kind of ramp up to exploring data that's important to them. And I think a huge draw for kids is when they're looking at data in their own communities about things that matter to that community. So I think like the 6 lessons are sort of an introduction, but then where they go from there, I think can, any question they want to ask can be answered by data. And that's where that lens of seeing the world through a mathematical lens will kind of changes their mindset about math. But I think you have to start with something small and then kind of scaffold up as their skills grow.
All right,
There was
thank you.
there was a conversation in the chat about the technology part, and I do think that trying to get them into data in a low tech way, and then as you scaffold up the sophistication of their questions, you're also scaffolding up the sophistication of the tools they're using.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. Once again, I'd just like to thank all the panelists again for sharing great resources, great ideas, great work is being done on 2 opposite coasts of the United States. And I'm going to turn it back over to the Executive Director of Data Science for Everyone, Zarek, for him to close us out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mahmoud. And again, yeah, huge thank you to the speakers who joined today. I think our goal at DS4E is always to highlight and elevate folks who are doing great work across the country. And I thought I love this conversation in particular because I think these are really 3 examples that are quite actionable and don't require a lot of startup time. But you can, just as Kathy said, right, you can weave these into some of the existing course content or the lesson plans you already have for the year. And I also know I think there's always anxiety around, oh, well, I had to do a lot of startup prep work to get this project off the ground, right? And to get my students in an experience like this. And I think the investment is worth it when you see the return on investment from the engagement you get from students after the fact. And I see some of the speakers nodding their head. Like I think you all had amazing examples of projects that really got students out of the textbook, a little bit out of the formal concept memorization, right? And into something that's really deep and lasts. And gets them excited about more mathematics or more science or more citizen science afterwards. And so, like I said, I've been looking forward to this conversation all year, and I was really grateful for you all sharing what you've been doing locally. And so the group knows we do have other folks outside of Idaho and North Carolina who've done similar work. It's not just those 2 states. And if you're ever interested in connecting with other people, either within your own state or across the country, that's what DS4E is here for. And if you're interested in taking on any of these projects or something similar, or if you've done some amazing work that you want to share out with the community, please get in touch with us. And I'm going to talk about a few ways to do that. First, you have the email and our contact information up there. You can also get in touch with DS4E through our community Slack. I would encourage you all to sign up. We have a fantastic newsletter that we put out regularly that Shay puts a ton of work into. And if you have updates you want to share out with the broader group, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, LinkedIn, Twitter, other social medias. Please feel free to connect with us there. The other thing I want to go to is our resource center. This is a underutilized part of our website, but exists and is up live right now for you to use. We have many, many free curriculum resources, lesson plans, full high school curricula, classroom software that are available and ready for use if your school or district, or you're just a classroom teacher who's interested about dipping your toe in and trying this in a future semester or even next school year. Huge thank you to y'all for you joining today. Another goal of ours is being punctual, so we're right at the dot in the hour. So we're going to let you all have an amazing holiday season, and we'll be back in January with another full slate of webinars for the second half of the school year. Hope you all have a great holiday and safe travels if you're going anywhere.